Hey everyone, thanks for joining in. We are deep diving into the ancient text. It's a collection of scrolls and writings that have been bound together, something we call the Bible, and we're trekking through the book of Acts. We're nearing the end of this book study, and we're landing on Acts 27. If you are interested in catching up to where we were last week, March 26th of 2026 is the last video that we did. So you can either go over to the channel or the page, wherever you're watching from, and check that out. Let me give you a brief background on where we've been, just to build on what we're studying about today. So Acts 27 begins where Paul is being sent as a prisoner to see Caesar in Rome. He's under Roman guard. He has a centurion who is escorting him there with other prisoners. He's not a criminal in the traditional sense, but he was arrested after he had a conflict with these Jewish leaders who were falsely accusing him of doing things in the temple, i.e. bringing in somebody who was a non-Jew into the gates, which he didn't do. And they're also opposing the teachings that Paul is giving throughout the territory. And Paul, who's actually a Roman, appealed to Caesar as a Roman citizen, and he wants his trial to be done there rather than in front of the Jews, because he already has heard that he's going to be killed on his way to go see the Jews. So he is on a grain ship that probably came up from Egypt, Alexandria to be more specific, and it's headed to Rome. And as they sail along the Mediterranean, dangerous seasonal conditions come up. Paul had already forewarned them, saying, hey, maybe we ought to wait here and hole up. But the owner of the ship captain, and even the sailors were like, no, let's at least get to the next port. So they set out for that. This violent storm comes up, and the ship gets off course for days, like a couple of weeks. And eventually all hope for survival is lost. And in the middle of the chaos, this angel appears to Paul, telling him, hey, don't be afraid. You are going to stand before Caesar, so you're going to survive. And everyone on this ship is going to survive too. And we talked about how faith can be renewed even though the storm didn't let up, and how the soldiers had sensed they were coming close to land because they had probably, we're filling in gaps here, but maybe the waves were landing a little bit differently on the hull. Maybe the wind conditions were dying down a little bit, but they decided to test and see if that was the case, and they dropped an anchor. And then went a little while more, dropped an anchor again, and it's now not dropping as far down. So they realize that they better go ahead and anchor this ship where it's at, because if it hits rocks, it's in the middle of the night, hits a sandbar, they're done. So they drop anchors, and then out of fear and desperation, these sailors start praying to God that God would save them. And after that, they told everybody that they were going to lower some more anchors, and then they secretly went out to lower the lifeboat and save themselves. So that's where we were last week. That was the last study. So for today, we're diving into Acts 27, verses 31 and 32. Just a couple of verses, but I think there's so much in this. Let's read it. But Paul told the officer and the other soldiers, hey, if these men do not stay on the ship, your lives cannot be saved. So the soldiers cut the ropes and let the lifeboat fall into the water. Wow. We got a role reversal here. So I want to just acknowledge that, because at the beginning of this journey, Here is a centurion who has high authority. He's carrying with him the responsibility of many prisoners, Paul being one of them. And then you have the sailors. They have expertise. And Paul had no title, no rank, no control. And now, in this moment, all of a sudden, Paul's giving instructions, saying, hey, calling the soldiers out, saying, look at what these sailors are doing. And you know what? If they leave, you guys are going to die. And now the sailors are being overruled. What's changed? Because Paul's position is still the same. They didn't listen to him before. And now even the soldiers are listening to him and cutting ropes so that they lose the lifeboat so that the sailors can't leave. It's not because of Paul's position at this point. It's because of his clarity. He's aware and he's seeing things. This storm really exposed who could be trusted. And obviously, it wasn't the sailors. So in calm seasons, when everything's going smooth sailing, if you will, authority comes from position. But when things start getting a little rocky and the boat starts rolling and you're in the middle of a crisis, authority will shift to the one with the courage and the clarity and the stability. And most oftentimes that can be the sailors or the captain or the owner of the ship. But in this case, Paul is being written in by Luke as being the one with the clear mind. So, point 2. Why does Paul say, hey, if they leave, you won't survive? This is what he's telling the soldiers. Hey, if those sailors leave, you ain't gonna survive. Which, that's not what the angel told him. The angel said, hey, you know you're gonna go to Caesar and stand trial. I'm just confirming that you will, and everybody on this ship's gonna be saved. Okay, so maybe the sailors do leave as a result, but did God already tell you through an angel that everybody's gonna survive? So what are we doing here? The angel said all would be saved. He didn't say, hey, stay on the ship or else you'll all die. No, that's not what would happen. So the process meant that everybody needed to stay in position in order to survive, because this is just purely logistics. This isn't anything spiritual, anything like that. Just listen to and take a look at the account here. The sailors are essential for the survival of everyone. Remember during COVID when we had essential workers? These sailors are essential for survival. And no one on the ship knows how to handle that ship better than the sailors do. And no one knows how to manage the final approach like the sailors do. And if they don't stay, chaos is going to increase and survival is going to decrease. That's the straight up logistical truth of that. The teaching point here I want to make is that promise that everyone is going to survive, promise does not remove responsibility. And I think oftentimes when we are in positions where we can do things for the common good out of fear, we'll just take care of ourselves. Forget everybody else. We're all going to die, right? So when you're in the exit row on the plane and the flight attendant comes up to you and says, hey, you're choosing to sit here, and we realize you're getting a little more leg room here, but there's also responsibility. You just can't jump and get out and save yourself. You are responsible as part of being essential to handle the exits. Wow. And they want an affirmative from each person there that they are willing to do that. And if you're not, no problem. We'll find somebody else who's willing to sit here. So that's basically what's happening here. So by this point, the ship is damaged. The navigation system's gone. And by the way, we're not using anything that's, digital like we do today. Most of the cargo has been thrown overboard already because they're lightening the ship. So it's not rocking so much and it's not sinking so much because of the weight. Less water is coming in. And they've already wrapped rope around the rudders so that it's at least staying stable. These are things that the sailors were doing because they knew what to do. And now they're going to jump ship. They know how to time the approach. They know how to respond if that ship breaks apart. They are essential. And with them, the soldiers and the prisoners, they wouldn't know what to do next if the sailors were gone. They're not experienced. So this is not a preference. This is a responsibility for the survival, not only for them, but for all. And when you signed up for this, is that not part of your responsibility? So there's a logistical responsibility to it, but there's also a moral responsibility to it. The sailors weren't just skilled, but they were responsible. And when they tried to leave, they weren't just escaping danger. They were escaping their duty at the most critical moment. That's a moral failure. And let me just say it like this. They didn't just try to save themselves. They walked away from the people who actually depended upon them. That's tough. And they've been out here now for 2 weeks. They're probably tired. They have not eaten. I mean, you're rocking and rolling on the sea. You're in fight or flight mode. Your body is in survival pattern. Your nervous system is shutting down. It's just whatever's out in front of us trying to survive. And now they realize they're reaching a point where land is close. It's at night. We can't navigate through this and we don't want to hit up on any rocks because we can't see anything. So we're going to go ahead and anchor this ship down. And then we're rolling out. Who cares what happens to the ship? We're done. Survival requires both competence and character here. And it's not enough to have the ability to help. You also have to have the responsibility to stay and to use it. I was traveling this past week and was getting ready to make a left-hand turn. And all of a sudden, the lady who's out in the middle of the intersection, who's been there waiting for the oncoming traffic to stop, I don't know what she was doing, but all of a sudden decided to go ahead and make that left right in front of 2 vehicles. She was going so slow when she did it in the oncoming traffic. I don't know how fast they were going, but the speed limit there was 50 miles per hour. She hit the first vehicle full force. The other one veered off and had time to stop. That truck that she hit flipped right in front of me and side over side, landed on the tires. Airbag deployed. Me working in the medical profession, I have plenty of knowledge and skill to be able to assist. Do I just walk away? So I start by calling 911, assessing the scene, and so on and so forth, and I stay in it. Because I have a moral responsibility at some point that I know and have skill set that I can use that are vital to this situation. Did I sign up for that? No. How many of us today, if we just tie the logistics and the morality together, are you walking away from your responsibility because it doesn't affect you? And then what do you do about putting everyone else at risk, especially when you have the skill set and you choose not to use it? So what happens? The soldiers cut the ropes. Wow. Paul's like, hey, over here. Our boys, they say they're lowering anchors. They're not. They're lowering the lifeboat. And if they leave, we're all going to die. So the soldiers went over and cut the ropes. That's pretty decisive. There was no debate. We don't hear about any delay. They weren't, casting lots, throwing dice, see who's going to go over to do it. There was no compromise. They removed the escape option completely. What does that prove? Trust had shifted. Because see, earlier, everyone ignored Paul. Now, everybody's listening to Paul. So they act immediately on his word. Why? He's earned trust. He's earned trust. And they also chose unity over self-preservation. See, they didn't negotiate with the sailors. Hey, can you at least show us what to do before you leave? Right? They didn't negotiate with him. They eliminated the division because half of the crew escaping is full ship failure, period. And cutting the lifeboats means that now they're going to be committed to the process because their life's on the line also. There's no backup plan now. There's no exit strategy. And there's no going back. So they're fully committed to all surviving together. And I think as I was preparing for this study, I was thinking about this, that sometimes obedience requires removing the option to escape. You don't survive the storm by keeping the backup plan, just to abandon the process. And I think the moment is a little deeper than the ship itself, because when authority shifts from your position to your character, because that's what happened with Paul. That's one thing. It's another thing when you're essential and your personhood requires participation and you remove yourself, or at least attempt to in this point, because now you have moral failure. And now you see soldiers stepping up for unity, which is necessary for the survival for all, including the prisoners. At some point, it's like, who cares about the prisoners? They're prisoners. Like, what is their life? Why are we concerned about prisoners surviving? But there were other people on this ship as well. They just also included prisoners and also these soldiers. And as you could see, Paul says, hey, if those guys leave, you're going to die. He didn't say all of us, because at some point, who cares about the prisoners, right? Paul's pretty smart when he's appealing to these soldiers, making it very personal to them. So as I wrap this up, we saw the last time, March 26th, 2026. If you want to see the previous study, just go over to the page or the channel, and you can scroll until you find that. You'll see there that these sailors who at one point were very confident in their skill set had done everything they could do, and now they're just praying to a God that they didn't believe in before. We don't hear anything about that. But then there's no faith in that. There's no relationship in that when you now have an escape plan in place. So they prayed, but then they prepared escape. And this week, we see that the escape was cut off. And now they must truly trust the process. That's where faith kicks in when you don't have a lifeboat. And sometimes that moment when your faith becomes real is when you stop keeping a backup plan. You're all in or you're not. So as you're self-reflecting on this particular study, where in your life are you saying you trust the outcome, but you're also holding your foot in the door to keep the exit open? And by you doing that, are you delaying your responsibility to stay in the system? Or are you trying to eliminate it? Are you all in? Or are you out? Holding on to an exit, it might be good for a minute. But once you've fully committed, you got to trust the process. And at some point, what is your moral obligation in your situation? Next time, we are going to look at the difference between surviving and collapsing, especially when you don't really have the strength to keep going. So may the truth that you learned today soften your heart, feed your spirit, and renew your mind, and guide your steps. And until we meet again next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep walking in light and in love.